Hey everybody, Jamie Kelly here, and you are watching the Otherworldly Fundraising channel. This is one of the videos from the 2024 online fan convention. We had a lot of fun talking to a wide range of people, actors, writers, cosplayers, you name it, about all kinds of topics. We had a great time, and we know that you're going to get a big kick out of it. The 2024 Otherworldly Fundraising season has been for MomBomb, which is a great organization helping mothers and some fathers who are in distress. It's a great charity, and we were more than happy to help them out. So if you would like to give, check out the information down below. And thank you all so very much. And now, on with the show.
So our next guest is the super talented actor, puppeteer, director, creator that we all know and love from things like Sesame Street, Avenue Q, Beauty and the Beast, Shrek, Julie's Green Room, so much. Are you ready to come on screen, John? Awesome. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Hello.
It is so nice to meet you. I know we have a lot of fans in the comments right now. My opening question that I love to do with guests here is, what's your elevator pitch? What do you like to say about your work, yourself? And it can be as serious or unserious as you want. It's always up to you.
I don't think I've ever been asked for my elevator pitch. I would say I come from a long line of entertainment family, and so I literally grew up as early as I can remember performing, entertaining, experiencing theater, experiencing live music and live shows. So I always knew I wanted to do this. I don't think I ever had a chance, honestly, to do anything else. And I discovered puppetry when I was about 7 years old, and that started me on this amazing journey that's kind of created my career. And so I would say that I'm so lucky to do the thing I love to do, and to do it in so many different ways, between performing and writing and directing and producing and creating. So I feel like I'm a very, very lucky person.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. That's a great elevator pitch.
I gotta refine that. Now I gotta be ready next time.
No, I love that. This is another of my questions that I love to ask people, because it is maybe a little bit silly, but do you have a boring fact that you would be willing to share about yourself? Like boring, low stakes.
I mean, I guess the best thing I could say is for a short period of time, I was a horrible busboy at a restaurant when I first moved to New York City, and I spilled a glass of red wine, all over a lady's white fur coat.
Oh no!
And that was like a moment where I was like, this is not a skill set for me. But honestly, I actually loved doing it. But yeah, I would say I'm a horrible busboy.
Yeah,
is that kind of in the realm of
I love that. I feel like that's a foundational New York City actor experience too.
Yes. I was a singing waiter for a while. I like doing that better, but handling lots of expensive glassware and not dumping wine on people, I don't know. I'm not very good at that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just going to highlight this lovely comment. Yes, MomBomb is such a great organization. Please donate. What Jamie and I have been saying all weekend is put what fandom you're in. So if you're like, I'm here because John's my favorite, put that in your comments and we'll see it. So please do donate. So you spoke to this a little bit, but I'd love to hear more about how you got into puppetry and theater, because I don't feel like I run into people every day that are like, yeah, I'm into puppetry. That's my thing.
Yes. It is a unique art form that there's kind of a growing community now because of what we're doing right now, talking online, and the ability for people to get that information, which I didn't have as a kid. But I knew I wanted to be. I knew I loved to perform. My mom's an actress. My dad's a musical director. So I grew up, when they were married, I grew up, going to see shows that my mom was in, going to see shows my dad was playing, and I would sit backstage and watch how the show came together technically, which I think definitely informed my directing life later. But I loved sitting in the audience. I just loved characters and voices and performing. And so when I was about 7, I discovered the original Fraggle Rock. It was on HBO originally, and I became a huge, massive fan of it, kind of obsessed with it. And there was this moment, I loved the show itself and the characters and the music and everything about it. And then there was this my synapses went woo moment where I realized, oh, there's people who do this for a living. There's people who are making these characters come to life and doing these voices, and how are they using their hand to, I don't know, to make this thing move that makes me feel this deep emotion, and I just thought that was such a cool thing to do. And so I started teaching myself and learning more about it, became really, obsessed and enamored by Jim Henson and everything he created. And I just knew by like age 8 that this is what I wanted to do. And I always say I think it's because puppetry combines all of the different skill sets that if you love performance and being a performer, you know, that are important. So, you know, it's singing, it's acting, it's movement, it's, you know, you're writing your own scripts, you're creating your own puppet stage, you're building your own stuff. So it just kind of uses all of your creativity. And also I could get away with things, you know, when you're like 8 years old and you want to make your family laugh and you can like put on this puppet that can say, you know, maybe like naughty things or silly things, like, you know, to get a laugh out of your family is like the greatest thing in the world. So that's really kind of what started it.
That's amazing. I love that. I think for so many actors, that ability to perform for your family is so foundational. That's really amazing.
Absolutely. I was lucky to have a very, very supportive family that like that loves to support that.
That's amazing as well. Yeah. On this theme, so I come from a dance and music background, and I'm also just a musical theater nerd in general. I am super curious, and I also have friends who really love puppets too. So I'm like talking with them as well. When it comes to timing and physicality, what are some things about puppetry that maybe folks who don't have any experience with puppetry wouldn't automatically think? Because I think we kind of see people doing puppets and we're just like, yeah, it's like Sesame Street. We don't think harder, but are there kind of more complexities there than what we might just know as audience members?
That's a great question. I mean, I feel like it depends on what kind of puppetry it is and where it's being done. Like, you know, when you're doing puppetry in theater, for example, like what we did with Avenue Q or The Lion King, you know, you can't see what your puppet is doing because you're performing as that character. So you have to be present, and it would be relatively boring for the audience in those cases, not all, for us to be staring at our puppet, you know. So we're having to kind of learn this like muscle memory of what's right for the audience and what looks good. And you know, you're always competing for, like in the case of like an Avenue Q, there were 800 seats in that theater, so there's 800 different points of view, and you have to make sure the performance is strong enough that the audience can tell, no matter where they're sitting, they can tell what's happening, right? So there's that's a challenge when you're doing live theater, you know, and obviously just what goes with theater, right? Which is like, you can't stop, you can't do it again, you can't do another take, you have to just keep going. So there's that challenge. I think when you're doing television puppetry, we're watching what we're doing live on a television monitor so we can see what the camera's doing. But you know, you're having to basically do the work that like a sitcom actor is doing, where you have, you know, 3 cameras cutting at the same time. You've got to hit your marks, you got to say your lines, but you've also got to make this puppet move and align in the shots the correct way. And most of the puppets we use are like, you know, this big. They're not giant, and there's these, you know, 5 foot to 6 foot people underneath the camera that have to, you know, navigate our bodies in whatever uncomfortable way they have to be navigated to get the puppet to look good. So it's really, it's like, it's the kind of thing where, and you get used to it, it becomes second nature. But I think it's the kind of thing that like, you don't think about when you're watching the show, you know what I mean? Like you're not thinking about what's happening underneath the camera and how we have to kind of contort. There's this great old expression, Frank Oz, who's one of the most brilliant puppeteers in the world. He's the original Miss Piggy and Grover and Yoda. And, you know, he always would say, like, if you're uncomfortable, then you're doing it right. And that's pretty true. It's like, if we're uncomfortable under the camera, it probably looks great on camera for the puppet.
Oh, no. That's amazing. We've got a great question from Steph here. Do you have a favorite role you've played and a favorite role you've directed?
Ooh, let's see. Well, I guess I would say in theater, I mean, that's such a hard question. I think it was probably Lumiere in Beauty and the Beast, because that musical means so much to me. I love that show, and I loved being Lumiere because he's exactly, I feel like he was like who I was as a kid, where he was like putting on a show and like, you know, wanting to make everyone feel welcome and entertaining, and just being in that show on Broadway and singing that Alan Menken, Howard Ashman music every night was just the greatest. I never got tired of doing that show. I loved it. I think as far as a show role, and I guess on TV, my favorite role would be Gobo Fraggle. I mean, to get to play this character that I grew up loving so much as a kid, and now get to take that character on is like, it's the happiest I've ever been doing that show. As far as being as a director, favorite role I've directed, well, you know, it was fun. I got to direct Shrek a few years ago, and having been in the show, getting to direct it and then work with the person playing Pinocchio in that production and getting to kind of pass on the things I learned doing that role. That was kind of a cool, like, bizarre life experience. Like, you never think you're going to direct the show that you were in, So,
Yeah.
so I guess that would probably be my answer.
That's amazing. We
Yeah.
have so many good, like, deep cut questions
Oh,
in
okay.
the chat
Bring 'em
here.
on.
So we have hi Helene is asking, I loved how Avenue Q had a puppeteer school for their actors. Is that true for other shows?
That's a great question. Yeah. I mean, it depends on what the show is. Like, we had to do that with Avenue Q because the show was kind of written for me and Stephanie and Rick and Jen, around the skills that we had as puppeteers already. And then there was that moment where, the producers were like, oh my God, we have to hire, the show has to go on after you guys leave the show. And we need understudies and we need other companies. So they created this, like, what we called, like, Avenue Q boot camp, basically, where they would bring in musical theater actors who had enough skills, basic understanding of puppetry, and kind of teach them the basics, and they would keep growing and keep learning. And I know a lot of musicals have done that for specialty. Like, I think, like for Jersey Boys, they had, like, Frankie Valley Camp where they would send,
Wow.
because it's such a hard thing to sing. As far as puppetry goes, I know, like, the Lion King, they tend to hire musical theater performers who mostly don't have puppetry skills and teach them puppetry. And there's kind of a training for that. I'm trying to think of other examples of that. Like, I think, like, Matilda, for the kids in Matilda, they would train them. So yeah, I mean, it depends. If a show has a real specialty like that, especially with puppetry, like Life of Pi. I don't know if you guys saw that on Broadway, but that had beautiful puppetry in it. And I think that they also have kind of a boot camp for that. Which is really, I love that, because to me, it's like, as a musical theater performer who is also just naturally a puppeteer, I love that we get to share those skills with more musical theater performers. So there's more puppetry, and then people are interested in it, and it kind of continues on, and people have this extra skill set that they maybe didn't have. Yeah.
That's awesome. That was a great question. I've got another one here from W. John, were you naturally ambidextrous from a very young age? You said you found puppeteering at 7 years old. Would you share a little bit more about how it became a passion then for you?
Oh my God, ambidextrous. Well, wait, isn't that where you can do with both hands, right? I am not ambidextrous. I think most puppeteers have, like, their dominant, like, their better hand.
Okay.
And I'm right-handed, and occasionally we have to put on, this is a fun fact, occasionally, like, in big group scenes where you'll see, like, every Sesame Street character or every Fraggle or everyone will wear two puppets at the same time.
Oh my gosh.
Just to get more, because so you're not trying to hire 50 puppeteers, you're hiring 25 and you have 50 puppets. And you can, I mean, it's so sad how bad, like, oftentimes our weaker hand puppetry looks. Like, they just don't look great. So I wish I was completely ambidextrous. You definitely have to be good with both hands, but my right hand is definitely the puppet hand for sure. But yeah, I just see the comment that and some puppeteers are, right. There's some puppeteers who can switch hands pretty easily, but I am not that person. And I forgot the other part of the question. I'm so sorry.
Oh no, that's okay. How did that become more of a passion? Even though you recognized that spark when you were young, how did that kind of build up? Especially as such a a young human. You were a little kid.
I think I kind of read obsessively. I mean, this is ye old days before the internet, right? So you had to, like, go to the library, or, like, if it was something on TV, you had to kind of catch it and maybe tape it on VHS if you were lucky. So I became really obsessed with all things Muppets and Henson, and I read a lot about how Jim hired his puppeteers, and there was one puppeteer who was incredibly influential to me named Richard Hunt. And there's a wonderful book called Funny Boy, all about his life. But he was an openly gay puppeteer for the Muppets, and he was his characters were really big. He did Sweetums and Janice and so many wonderful iconic characters, and I loved those characters. But I remember reading that Richard got hired, like, he cold called, like, Jim at, like, 18 years old and was like, I want to work for the Muppets, and he got hired at 18. And so I remember telling my mom at, like, 8 years old, like, walking into the kitchen while she was making dinner and being like, just so you know, when I'm 18, I'm going to graduate high school. I'm not going to go to college. I'm going to move to New York City and work for the Muppets. Okay, bye. And I was very, very blessed that that's what happened. But so I kind of, like, it's weird. I almost knew at 8, like, most kids are still figuring out, like, what do they want to do or what do they want to be, or I knew at 8, I was like, oh, this is my goal. My goal is to live in this place called New York City. My goal is to work for the Muppets, for Jim Henson. At 18, like, this is the same path. I can do this too. And so I think that having that sense of purpose, that sense of like passion, that sense of knowledge of what I wanted to do kind of drove me. And then I just became a sponge and absorbed like everything I could learn about television puppetry and Henson and Muppets and you know, and still doing theater. Like that was the blessing, is like, you know, I had this dual life where I was like doing all the leads in the high school shows, and I loved doing theater and singing. And so I never thought that I would make my Broadway debut doing both, like puppetry and theater. But I always I never like said, oh, I only wanted to do puppetry. It just, that became like a goal that I wanted to do that. And then the side, I wanted to also do theater. And so I'm very lucky I've been able to kind of navigate both mediums, you know?
Yeah, that's so wonderful. I have another, I don't know if this is a deep cut. So my good friend Bob, DJ Bob, the DJ Bob Show, he does wonderful podcasts.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he way more knowledgeable about puppetry than me. So I was like, okay, bro, you gotta give me a good question. And so just you'll have to see if this means something to you. He says to ask about the Almost Mickey Mouse Club experience. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah. So I was first of all, I was a huge fan of the new Mickey Mouse Club, like Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears, all that. Watched it obsessively, and I wrote a letter to Jim Henson when I was about 7 years old, telling him what I said to you, which is like, I want to come work for you. I want to work for the Muppets. I want to do what you do. Didn't hear back for a while, but finally, like a year later, got back this beautiful signed photo from him and like a letter from a secretary saying he'd read my letter. And so I was like, oh my God, I've made contact with my hero, right? And then a few months after that, I was at school and I got called to the principal's office, and I thought I was in trouble. And they were like, oh, there's a lady on the phone for you. And my mom was at that time, my parents were divorced. I was a latchkey kid, you know, so I was like at home by myself a lot. My mom worked, you know, a job. She was a single mom. So I was worried it was my mom calling, you know, something was wrong. And I get on the phone, and it's this lady from the new Mickey Mouse Club. And she's like, you know, I'm the talent coordinator. I think her name is Kate Link. I don't know if she's out there, but she was so nice. And she was like, I'm the talent coordinator for the new Mickey Mouse Club. And we have this thing called Guest Day, where every Friday we have a famous celebrity on, and a real kid gets to interview him or her. And Jim Henson's going to be on. And he suggested that maybe you'd be a good kid to interview him.
Wow.
And I was like, what? Like, you know, I mean, A, I'm being asked to possibly be on this show that I'm obsessed with, and B, my hero suggested my name. So I think I was one of many kids he may have suggested, and many other kids that were interested in Jim Henson. But it started off with like 30-something kids, and then it got narrowed down over like a week. It got narrowed down and narrowed down and narrowed down, and finally it was me and one other kid. And they ended up picking the other kid. I was devastated.
Oh.
I've since become friends with him, and actually like we've shared kind of like, he's like, well, you got the career that I wanted, and I'm like, yeah, you got the experience I wanted meeting Jim Henson. But if I had met him, I would have gone to like the set of the Muppet 3D movie that he was shooting and spent the day with him, and basically my dream. And it, you know, it didn't happen. And I believe everything happens for a reason. So it didn't happen. And then a few months later, he passed away. So it was this like it was such a close moment of like almost getting the chance to have that thing happen that didn't happen. But so that show means a lot to me, because it was kind of, you know, it was kind of like my entry almost into meeting Jim.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that there was still that point of connection, if not quite as close. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, just to know that he knew who I was, and that he was thoughtful to say, like, here's this obsessed kid in New Jersey who wants to meet me. Maybe he'd be the right person.
I love that. He's like, I know the perfect kid.
Yeah. This kid will have questions, yeah.
I've got, hey, Bob, coming in with another great question. One of my dearest friends is the amazing Jocelyn Stevenson, one of the creatives of Fraggle Rock. What's it like having her in the writer's room and the essence checker during the reboot? Also, hello.
Hi, Bob. Jocelyn Stevenson is a legend. You know, she worked for many years for Jim Henson and the Muppets and Fraggle Rock, and has gone on to be this incredibly impactful and powerful creator in the world of family entertainment. She's really special, and I'm so lucky to call her a friend. You know, I was meeting her originally. I met her, I think like 15 years ago. And I was so intimidated because I was like, you know, her name carries so much weight in my world. And I was like, oh my God. And I had just started performing Gobo. Actually, maybe it was 11 years ago. 11 years ago I met her. And I just started performing Gobo for a series of promotions. It was the first time I'd ever done the character. And I was, you know, am and was such a huge Fraggle Rock fan. So meeting her, I was so intimidated. Like, you know, does she like me? Does she like? And it was at this Fraggle Rock reunion party, the 30th anniversary. And she was like, oh my gosh, so nice to meet you. You're doing such a great job. Like, she immediately made me feel so welcome and such a part of the world. And then when we knew that, you know, we were going to bring the show back and reboot it, we really felt it was important to have some of those original voices as a part of the foundation of the show, because, you know, we weren't rebooting the show because, oh, it didn't work. You know, let's see if we can fix it this time around. It's like, no, we're reimagining and rebooting this incredibly beloved, successful hit show. So how crazy would we be to not involve, you know, people who worked on the original, right? And Jocelyn had such a knowledge of the reasons why certain things were the way that they are, the reason why certain characters work well. You know, she'd gone through the process of mistakes in the beginning of the original series to know what we should avoid. So her wisdom and her knowledge has been so incredibly valuable. And you know, and she's just a lot of fun. So like, you know, we laughed so much in the room, and, you know, and having worked directly with Jim Henson, you know, she so often reminds us in the room about, you know, that silliness is so important, and you know, to find a fraggly way to tell something, these very kind of serious subjects, right? Like a lot of the episodes of Fraggle Rock deal with very serious subjects, but to do it in a way that feels fraggly and silly, and she's a dear person. We're very lucky to have her.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm just going to remind us at our halfway point in the hour that we are here to help support MomBomb. They're a wonderful business and organization that helps give grants to moms and dads who need extra support. You can go to that link that's scrolling on the screen, or go to any of our socials. Kristen has posted a bunch there. Otherworldly Fundraising on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, our website. Go ahead and donate. We have every $10 gets you an entry into the sweepstakes for I believe it's 3 mystery boxes. That's very exciting. We also have, for the next 3 people that donate over $50, you will get a MomBomb gift set. This is great. The holidays are around the corner. It's a really cool charity. And thank you so much, John, for donating your time to be here.
Of course.
I have a little bit of a selfish question. So I grew up watching like Muppets, and every year have to watch the Muppets Christmas Carol. I love that. I think the premise that they're all Muppets, but except Scrooge is just so funny.
So
I
brilliant.
desperately want to see a Muppets Pride and Prejudice where they're all Muppets. Yeah, except Mr. Darcy. I want him to be the only non-Muppet. So this is like my like ridiculous scheme. Do you have anything like that where you're like, this needs puppets? Is it a book, a TV show, just a movie, something you want to create that needs Muppets, that like is just something, I don't know, that's been rolling around in your brain that you're like, I just want this?
I don't think I have anything specifically, but I feel like as you say that, I'm like imagining like, you know, like reimagining like history. I don't know, I feel like it would make it so much more interesting, right? To do like maybe historical events with puppets, acting them out, like or taking like some classic films and just doing them all Muppets. You know, this obviously never came to be, but there was talk in the 90s before Into the Woods, the movie, came out in 2014 with Meryl Streep and everybody.
Mm-hmm.
There was a short period of time where they were trying to think of it as like a Muppets film.
Wow, I would see that. Yeah.
I know. I'm like, I understand why it didn't happen, but I'm like, oh my God, like Stephen Sondheim's music and the Muppets together. Come on.
Oh my God. Yeah. I don't think they'd recover. I think that would be amazing.
I think you're right. So yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, you never know. There could be something down the line. I have to think. You're inspiring me to think about what it could be.
I love it. We have another fun question. Do you ever find yourself slipping into character voices? And do you have a favorite character voice that you like enjoy the most?
It's funny. I mean, the answer is yes, and not because you're like having like a, you know, a mental breakdown where you're like not sure who you are necessarily, but like sometimes it's just like when you do a voice for a long period of time, your vocal cords get a little like adjusted to that. So when we're shooting Fraggle Rock, 6 months of doing Gobo, he's very pingy up here, and so I find that it takes a little while for my voice to reset from that. I speak a little more nasal, like unintentionally, because it's Gobo. And when I was doing Avenue Q, with Rod, he was very like this, and so I would find that sometimes on like days off or when I was really tired, like my tired voice would get a little like that, So I think sometimes you do kind of, you're especially when you're doing a show 8 times a week for a couple of years, like that really kind of readjusts your how you hold yourself and your muscles and everything. So never like where I like meet somebody and I'm like, hello, like I never like step into a voice like in like a crazy way, but it definitely, your voice definitely readjusts. And then let's see, do a favorite. Oh, I mean, I loved doing Rod. I just loved his voice because it's so stupid and it's like, he's just a fun character to do, and he's very. There's just something ridiculous about this sound that I liked. I also do Architect Doozer on Fraggle Rock, and he's very, he's up here, and I love talking like this because it's very official and makes me sound smarter than I am. So there's fun voices like that, that you just kind of, you look forward to doing those characters,
Yeah. And you mentioned, having to do 8 shows a week, and that's a lot on your voice. And I'm also curious because I think this does vary kind of actor to actor. I'm a big fan. I like structure and routine. I like to keep going back to the same piece over and over again. But then I also have a lot of entertainment friends that are like, nope, it needs to be interesting. It needs to change. So how do you feel? Do you like the 8 shows a week? I'm doing this over and over, or do you have to like work to keep that interesting after that time?
That's a great question. I love the structure of 8 shows a week. I love the community of it. I love, like being in the theater. I love being in that space. I love connecting with the audience. I'm never one of those I've never been one of those performers who can't not give 100% on stage. Like even if I'm feeling sick and I'm like, I'm going to take it easy this show. Like there's something about that privilege of being on stage and that connection with the audience. I just have to give it all, So I never really got tired of like, oh, I don't want to do a show or I don't want to, like that. But I think, I made kind of a promise with myself that I would never be I've had the unlucky experience of seeing shows, on Broadway when I was growing up, things like that, where you could tell that performers were just walking through it and they were just kind of, and by the way, it is easy to get there because after a while, once all the excitement wears off of opening night and the Tonys are over, all that stuff, it's a job and it's an amazing job, but you get to the point where your body can literally kind of click in and do it. And you have to really work to keep yourself present and to really keep yourself in the moment. So you don't just do the same thing every single night, But I kind of made myself a promise that if I ever felt in a show that I was able to do that, to kind of just turn on automatic, that I would think about leaving. Because I just feel like no audience member deserves that. I think if you're paying hundreds of dollars and you've traveled that many miles to see a show, you should get an A+ show always, And I think that's just the privilege of being on Broadway or doing that level of performance. And I remember the day in Avenue Q, and I'd been with the show since the very first reading, the very first workshop. So I had years of doing the characters and the music stuff under my belt. But I remember it was like 2 years in, and I remember during like a matinee and during a moment in the show where I should have really been present, I was like, maybe I'll have like pasta for dinner. Like I was like somewhere else, you know what I mean? And the audience probably had no idea because my muscle memory, everything was there and I was in the show. But that's when I was like, oh, that's not a good sign. You know what I mean? And I just feel like there's someone else waiting to be in that position who wants to give 100% and has all that stored up to give. So I don't want to take that away from them because I'm just collecting a paycheck. And so I just felt like it was time to like artistically do something different. So I think that's kind of where I come from. I just feel like, and that is like the showbiz kid in me, like from being raised by a showbiz family, like you give it all you got, and then when it's time to move on and make room for somebody else, you do that. So, but I actually do love doing 8 shows a week. I miss doing 8 shows a week. There's something wonderful about that structure and that routine,
Absolutely. And that's, a beautiful way to honor the life cycle of where you were with that project too.
Yeah.
I have to say the audience, I want to put the comments up. The audience loved those voices. I just want to make sure you get that shout out. They are just having the best time. Helene says, I love recognizing your characters so easily.
Thank you.
Yeah, and there were other comments too. There's so many I can't keep track. But someone is saying now I have the idea for where the witch from the Frog Prince turns into Bernadette Peters. We have so many ideas in the comments.
It's endless. There's like endless choices.
We've got another question here. Oh, so just want to say I will give away this. This might be my parents, and he's saying, just want to say this is one of the coolest interviews ever. Are there things you do to keep your voice in good shape?
Well, first of all, if you are, is this actually like your parents?
It's my dad, yeah.
Okay, well, your daughter's awesome and is a great interviewer. So there you go. Yeah, I mean, especially when you're doing like a long run of a show, you really have to kind of. I remember hearing this like before I did Broadway, and I was like, "What? Like, what are you talking about?" But now I get it. Is you do have to kind of live like a nun, they say, in the sense of like, you know, when you're doing a really difficult vocal show. Like anyone who's played Elphaba in Wicked will tell you this. Anyone who's, you know, played the lead in Next to Normal will tell you this. You know, when you have that expectation on your voice, whether in my case, I never was doing that kind of singing, but like, you know, I was doing hard voices that are hard to sing in. You have to basically like treat it like an Olympic sport. And so you have to, you know, rest all day. You've got to be very careful how you use your voice. You can't go out to a bar yelling until 2 a.m. You can't drink a lot. You have to be careful what you eat before a show. I went through a period in Avenue Q where I was, you know, losing my voice a lot, and I didn't understand why. And it was because I was eating certain things that like were horrible for like acid reflux, and I didn't know. You know, I had no idea. So you really have to treat it like, you know, like a muscle, and like you know, the way an athlete wouldn't sit up till 4 a.m. if they're, you know. If they're, I'm trying to think of an example of it. Sports are not my thing, but if you're an ice skater, right? Like you wouldn't want to be dancing at a club until 4 a.m. and exhaust those muscles, right? You have to rest. You have to think of it like that. So, you know, you have to go to the gym and make sure that your body's in good condition. You're eating well. You're getting a lot of sleep. You're drinking a lot of water. Hydration is everything. So yeah, it's a little bit like you learn your limits, right? Like, when we were doing like the Tony Awards, we were doing a lot of talk shows and things like that. In addition to Avenue Q 8 shows a week, I had to basically just be silent all day, you know, because I just wouldn't have a voice otherwise. So it's interesting. It's like the things you never would think about that, but it's you just have to treat it like it's like it's a muscle that needs to be very carefully used.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's awesome. So much love in the comments. I know we have a lot of Stars in the House fans here.
Oh, yay.
Lots of puppets and Broadway fans. You mentioned Shrek earlier, and I love that because that was actually on my list. I grew up doing a lot of community theater, and I feel like it is a rite of passage to be in a Shrek production. Like it happens. And I've seen lots of productions. I've been in one. It was very fun with all my community theaters. How does it feel for you? You spoke to this a little bit, to get to see, you know, kids and kind of the next generation of theater nerds get to be in that show that, you know, was a big part of your journey as well. And because there's so many beautiful shows on Broadway, but not all of them make it to our community theaters.
That's a great point. Yeah, it's so wonderfully bizarre. And I say wonderfully bizarre because it's like when you're in that kind of a show, you know, and you're part of the experience of like the rewrites and the cuts and the fixes, and you know, and just the kind of for lack of a better way of putting it, like the going into war of doing a new musical, where it's like, you know, you're in these battles and you're watching things explode over here that, like, you know, and you're watching like your favorite songs get cut. That's like, you know, it's a very emotional thing, and it's hard. It's a you know, it's a unique experience, right? And so when you're going through that, you're never thinking of like, oh, 15 years from now, you know, I'm going to go to, like I just did a few months ago, my you know, friend's, you know, middle school son's production of Shrek Jr. and watch them sing these songs that you sang every night, and watch them do these jokes that you know where they came from, and oh, that joke got added in the third preview out of town in Seattle. Like, it's just really bizarre, and it's so wonderful. I find myself getting very moved, especially with that show, because of the lessons behind it and the moral of that show. And I love that it's a show that it's shocking how many productions there are of it. I feel like I think I read that it's like the third most produced show, like across the country.
I believe it.
And I do too. And I think it gives, you know, Freak Flag, you know, the whole message of that song about, you know, embracing the things that make you different and make you, you know, unique, and that makes you powerful and strong. I mean, for
Mhm.
especially for the world we live in right now, and the fact that kids are hearing that message and experiencing that message on stage is like, it just makes my heart so happy. And but yeah, it's very it's surreal, I guess is the word, you know.
Yeah.
And I just never thought I'd have that. I remember the first time I heard, I was sitting in an audition room like 3, 4 years after Avenue Q came out. And I remember sitting in an audition room and in the next door hearing someone singing Purpose. And I was like, oh my God, that's so weird. Like, you know what I mean? And it was like, I got really emotional. I was like, oh my God, they're singing my song. Like, you know,
Mhm.
it's a very, it's a really cool experience. And it's neat to think that that show, because Shrek wasn't really, you know, we only ran a year on Broadway. We weren't a huge hit. We didn't have the life that I think that they were hoping to have. I think they thought it'd still be running today. So it
Mhm.
was sad when we closed. It was very kind of like this thing we all put our life and our heart and our soul into was over, and it was like, okay. And you know, we knew there was probably going to be a national tour, but we thought that's probably it. And so the fact that it's had this immense life now is just,
Mhm.
I'm so happy for the writers and for everybody, because it was a labor of love.
Yes, definitely. We have about 15 minutes left,
Okay.
and I've got so many great questions in the comments. If I haven't gotten to your question yet, please repost it because that helps me to make sure we get to them. I wanted to, oh, this one's funny. So Crystal says here, what's the most awkward position you've had to work with a puppet? And I wanted to say, I wish I could recall the show right now, but there's this clip going around TikTok of this puppeteer lying on his back to hold the puppet. And he's literally,
Oh yeah,
another person is like dragging his legs. Have you seen that one?
that's my friend's show. Yep, yep, yep.
Yes. Yeah. So that's having its moment on TikTok. So
Yeah.
have you had kind of extreme situations like that?
Yes. I mean, we really do, especially in the days before, you know, now with movie technology. I mean, you know, you can have a puppeteer dressed in a full blue suit standing behind a puppet and get rid of them, right? So it's
Mhm.
really come so far, like what we can do. So you don't have to, as much as you did before, figure out where you're going to hide the performer, but then situations like that come up where it's like that was the best way to get that shot, you know. And they probably, I'd almost guarantee, and I don't know this for sure, but I'd almost guarantee they didn't think like, oh, I'll just drag you down this bridge to make it, like they probably just realized in the moment that's the best way to do it. And that's sometimes what happens. I mean, I've been shoved in the trunk of a car to get a shot. I have the most, and it's funny because I've become more claustrophobic as I've gotten older, but I wasn't
Oh.
really claustrophobic when I was younger. But when I was like 20, I did a series, and they wanted the character to be laying in bed, and the only way to do that was to literally put me in this essential like coffin where I was like had my arm through the bed, through like what you see of the bed for the puppet to lay in bed, and I was just laying flat with like this much clearance, you know. Which
Oh my
now
God.
thinking about that, I'm like, oh God, oh God, oh God. But like at the time, I was like so excited to be doing it. I was like, put me in. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think. I think I said the trunk of the car. I've been under. I had a shot where a character looking was driving a car, so I was literally shoved into like below, like where the brake and the gas were in this car, and like, you know. So you just kind of, I don't know, you just get used to it, you know, and you figure it out. With on Fraggle Rock, I do Sprocket the dog, and you know, he always is he's supposed to look the most real out of all the characters, right? So we do him through floorboards, sitting straight up, and he's a big puppet. So I'm literally like this, reaching through like, you know, 4 inches of plywood and plaster, and sometimes he's in a sofa, so I'm stuck in the sofa. So yeah, you name it, I've probably been, you know, shoved into it or laying underneath it at some point. Yeah.
Definitely a hazardous industry. Crystal also says, "Oh, as a puppeteer, do you still get struck around iconic puppets?"
You know, I do, because there's always those moments where it's like, you know, as a kid, I grew up wanting to do this so badly and wanting to work in this world and wanting to work with these characters and these puppeteers. So I still, when I'm around, you know, and like it's surreal to be around, you know, Miss Piggy or Kermit or, you know, and I'm, you know, they're puppets. They're not real things. There's many of them. There's many Kermits, many Miss Piggies. There's, you know, it's been 30 years almost now since I've been, no, actually 30 years since I've been doing this professionally. And like, you know, but there's still that moment of like, oh my God, like Miss Piggy, you know. And I feel that way about the Fraggles, you know, like that was my favorite show in the world. And even though it's work, like every now and then when I had put Gobo on, I'm like, oh my God, I have Gobo Fraggle on my hand. Like if 7-year-old me had known One of the coolest experiences was recently I was doing an event at the Center for Puppetry Arts in Georgia, which if you've never been to, if you're in Atlanta, go to the Center for Puppetry Arts. It's the most amazing museum about puppetry, and they have a great Fraggle Rock exhibit now. They have a great Jim Henson exhibit. But if you know the character Madam, performed by Waylon Flowers, who's a very famous puppet from like the 70s and 80s, it's very kind of campy, hilarious puppet. But I used to love Madam. And she was just sitting like on a table. They were doing refurb on her, and she was sitting on a table. And I turned around. I was like, "Oh, that's Madam!" Like I've never seen her in person. So there's still that moment of like these beautiful pieces of art that get created. Like they're such an an indelible part of our lives and our childhoods, and then to be in front of them. That's actually one of the greatest gifts about doing Gobo is when I get to do meet and greets with him now and watching literally people sob as they're meeting the Fraggles. Like it's like I'm like, I get it. That's me. I get it. I feel the same way.
Yeah. We're coming up with about 10 minutes left, so I have two questions I really want to make sure we get to.
Sure.
So this one I started last year. Kristen is our fearless leader, and so last year I started doing some of the interviews. Kristen's the best. And the question I always like to ask, kind of regardless of industry, is what advice do you have for aspiring puppeteers and just theater nerds in general?
Oh gosh, I think it's twofold. I think one is truly don't, because I think I'm an example of this. Don't get so lost on one point of view in your dream that you miss the opportunity to discover other dreams along the way, and that you don't miss the ability to learn other skill sets. I feel like if I had just said, I'm only going to do this one thing, forget everything else, which by the way, I mean, you have to have a passion. But as that passion is being developed, and as if you're like, I see myself on Broadway, that's my goal, and you're starting here, keep yourself on that highway, but don't be afraid to take stops at the rest stop or stops at the exit every now and then, or a couple exits now and then, because you do pick up skills and you learn them. I am not a dancer, but I love to dance, and I would take dance classes in New York City and take everything from like jazz to ballet to hip hop. And when I was working on Sesame Street, one of our puppeteers knew that. And when we had Destiny's Child on, Beyonce and Destiny's Child, they asked me to choreograph that moment with Elmo and Beyonce. I was like, what's happening? But he was like, oh, I know you take like dance classes. So I know you know dance, you know how to move, you understand how to teach someone movement. Now, that's insane and a bizarre example. But if I hadn't had that skill set, if I hadn't taken those classes, even though I didn't want to be a dancer, it was just helpful, and so, I never thought I would be a voiceover artist. That wasn't something I dreamt of. But when I had the opportunity to learn that and learn those skills and to do that, it paid the bills for a while doing, voiceovers for commercials and animation. So I think it's just about being really open-minded to what the universe brings to you and to not close yourself off to experiences because you're so laser focused on one thing. And then the other thing I would say is, I wish we had the ability, like everyone does now, to have an instant audience. When I was a kid, I would have died for that. Are you kidding me? Like my mom and my grandmother would have loved to not be the only people forced to watch my shows. The fact that now everybody has this immediate access to a worldwide audience is, if you really think about it, is incredible. And so I feel like for performers, it's a dual gift because you have an immediate place to put your content and share what you do and what makes you unique with the world. And you have an immediate way to learn because, you're going to see what works and what doesn't, right? There's a lot of things that aren't great about that. But I think that there is something magical about the fact that, if I wanted, when I was 8 or 9, I could have been making short films with my iPhone and putting them on YouTube for the world to see my puppetry and learn from that, and gotten to make something. So there's something kind of exciting about the idea that every artist now can make their own thing. And so I always tell people, that's what Jim Henson did, that's the lesson I had to learn. I spent a lot of time imitating other people because I wanted to be them. And it wasn't until I kind of did my own thing and created my own thing and created my own path that I found success. So I think it's really about making your own stuff, taking advantage of technology to share it, and finding your creativity and not being closed off to where it might lead you.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's so beautiful. We've not had that answer from a guest before. I love that. That's great. The other thing I wanted to make sure in our last 5 minutes here is, do you have any anything you want to share about upcoming projects, work you're interested, any of the self promo? I know it can be awkward, but like, have at it. We want to hear it.
I know it's so awkward to be like, do this, go check out this thing. Well, the thing I'm really excited about a few things. We're gonna be launching Fraggle Rock Live on tour, which in 40 years of Fraggle Rock being in the world, it has never had a live experience before. So it's the first time, and it's been really exciting to put together this kind of it's really for all ages. It's if you are a fan of the classic show, you will love it. If you have kids that are watching the Apple TV Plus series, the new series, like they'll love it as well. It's really for everybody. We wanted to create a family experience in the theater, so that parents aren't tearing their hair out because they hate what their kids are watching, and the kids are loving watching their parents rock out too. So it's going on tour starting in January. You can go to Fraggle Rock Live, FraggleRockLive.com to find out more. It's going to be beautiful walk-around versions of the Fraggles and puppet versions of the Doozers and oversized versions of the Gorgs, and it's going to be really special, really magical. So I feel really honored to get the chance to help bring that to life, because it's something that the original series didn't get to do. So it feels like we're kind of taking it down a new path, and hopefully we'll have more Fraggle Rock, on Apple TV Plus, Back to the Rock. Hopefully we'll do more of that. I'm going to be directing a production of Frozen in Florida, in Florida at the Mulch-Jupiter Theater in December, January. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
And lots of other.
Such a Frozen fan. I love to hear that.
You? Oh, I'm so excited. I'm really excited to do it. So I love the Mulch-Jupiter Theater, and I love Frozen the musical. So I'm excited to kind of get a chance to bring that to life and tell that story. Some other fun things I can't yet talk about, but like lots of really exciting.
Love to know that that's like in the future.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask the very Gen Z question. Do you have socials that you want people to follow you on?
Let me identify that as a Gen Z question. Yes. You can follow me at Johnny Tartags, JOHNNYTARTAGS, on Instagram. I'm on Facebook under my name, John Tartaglia. You can also on Cameo, you can request videos. I'll make you a Cameo video. You can look me up there. And I have my Sunday Fun Day show on Sirius XM. I'm on there every Sunday from 2 to 8 on the On Broadway channel. So you can always give me a follow there and give me a follow on Broadway. So I'm
amazing.
Did I do the socials right? I think I did the socials.
Yes, you did. You did amazing. Top marks. That is amazing. Thank you so much for being here. I know it can be overwhelming, but I just want to say there's so many comments of everyone loving you. So grateful you're here today.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for watching, and for this is such an important thing. So I'm happy.
We've got someone saying this Gen X wants to know socials too. Amazing. Thank you for being here. I know you have a hard stop in a couple minutes. I'm going to remind everyone, please donate. Let's see. I'm refreshing our page. We are at 47% of our goal. That's amazing.
That's amazing.
We really are about halfway through our weekend. So I love that we're about halfway through our goal. Please donate. You can see that screen on the link on the bottom of the screen. Also, all our social medias, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, you'll be able to find all of those links. It's a really wonderful charity that helps moms and dads who are struggling and need that extra support. Again, a big thank you to you, John. It was so lovely to meet you. And thank you for taking the time. Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Hope everyone has a great weekend.
Yes, have a great weekend.
Take care.
Hey everybody, Jamie Kelly here. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to like it, share it, comment on the video, and subscribe to the channel if you've not already. And be sure to check out all of the videos in the 2024 online fan convention for Otherworldly Fundraising. And be sure to check out MomBombs and support them. If you can, check out the links in the description for all the relevant information. Thank you so much. And again, this is Jamie Kelly with EAP Society and Jack Life YouTube channels. And we hope to see you back here at Otherworldly Fundraising real soon. Take care, everybody. Bye.